So, done the chest, now we're going to move back to the abdomen. Nice, it's a soft container here, not like the rigid container for the chest. So this allows for the expansion, and being a ruminant, they tend to have quite a large abdomen because the animal is carrying around a large amount of food. So we're going to find the stomachs in here, small intestine, and organs such as this one here, which you can see already with the liver. So what we'll do is we'll zoom in and have a bit of a closer look at the arrangement of these organs in the abdomen. Okay, so we've cropped in a bit tighter here. We can see things a bit more clearly. And before I start removing stuff, we'll just look at how everything's arranged in situ, because there is a reason behind the way things are laid out here. So I'm holding on to the diaphragm. Right underneath the diaphragm here is the liver. This dark red structure, a lot of you will recognise that, is the liver. On the underside, which is what we're looking at, this thing here, it's just like a little balloon with green fluid in, is the gallbladder. And I don't know if you can see, but there's a little duct going from the gallbladder into here. This is the start of the small intestine, this structure here. So this here is the last stomach. It's the very end of the last stomach. And then we have this, which is the start of the small intestine. So the material's coming out of that stomach into the small intestine. At the start of the small intestine, you have the gallbladder emptying into the small intestine, and what it's emptying in is this fluid in here, which is the bile. Now, bile is the waste products from the liver. They're collected here, and when food comes down the small intestine, the bile is released in as well, and the bile salts help emulsify fats, and emulsification means that the fat globules are broken down into smaller structures so that the enzymes can break them down and they can be digested. So the waste product from the liver, this bile, has a use in breaking down the material coming out of the stomach. And the other thing that also empties into the small intestine, not quite so easy to see, but this material here, this sort of slightly orangey material, is also emptying into the small intestine. That is the pancreas. Now, the pancreas has two functions. One of them is to secrete digestive enzymes into the small intestine, as well as buffers, because the material coming out of this stomach here is acidic, highly acidic. It's got hydrochloric acid in it, and that acid has to be neutralized. So the buffers from the pancreas help that. The enzymes start the digestion of the material coming into the small intestine. The other function of the pancreas is control of blood glucose level. So your insulin comes from the pancreas, and the insulin is the hormone that makes your body take glucose out of the circulation and store it. So when you've had a meal, your blood glucose level goes up. The pancreas here releases insulin. That makes the cells in your body, and particularly your liver, store that glucose. And then when your glucose levels drop and you need more glucose in the circulation, the pancreas releases an opposing hormone, which is called glucagon, and the glucagon causes the cells here to release the glucose back into the circulation. So it maintains a nice steady supply of glucose to the whole body with those two hormones. And the other thing that we can see here, this here is the one of the kidneys. So what I'm going to do now is to start removing these organs and just have a little bit of a closer look at them. So what we'll do is we'll start with the liver. So there's the liver. It's the largest organ in the body. It's the major metabolic organ, which means it's the major organ that manufactures material that is in the circulation. So the proteins and things that are in the circulation, a lot of them are manufactured in the liver. The liver gets its blood supply from the gastrointestinal tract, from the small intestine. The blood that goes to the small intestine picks up nutrients. First place it goes to is the liver. So what the liver does, it sort of acts a bit like a warehouse. It takes the material out of the circulation and stores it, if there's plenty of it, and then releases it back into the circulation. It takes the material, the nutrients that have been absorbed, and builds them into the material required for the animal. So it takes the building blocks that have been absorbed and can alter those building blocks and put those building blocks together to make materials required for the circulation for the rest of the animal. It also detoxifies the blood that's coming through it. So if the animal's eaten anything that's got toxins in it, eaten anything that's got pathogens on it, they can be removed at the liver. So it's quite a busy organ, removing old red blood cells, lots of functions of the liver. And as I said, the waste products are stored here in the gallbladder, and they are then released into the circulation, into the small intestine. Now, some animals don't have a gallbladder. If they don't have a gallbladder, the bile is just flowing into the small intestine continuously. And I'll just show you what this bile looks like. So we'll just take some of that. So bright green liquid, and emulsification of fat is its main use. Now, here we have a big curtain-like structure which is covered in fat. This is called the omentum, and it's all sort of around the intestinal tract, and it's one of the main storage parts of fat. This animal hasn't got an awful lot, so there's not an awful lot of fat on here. But you can see this here is the last stomach, the abomasum, and you can see how it attaches to the omentum, this fat storage. So I'll just put that out of the way. And here we have the small intestines. We just go through this omentum. And here we have the small intestine, meters and meters of small intestine. We're going to come back to this in the later part of the lab, but just you can see here how it runs around the edge of a membrane. So the small intestine is all around the edge of a membrane here, and in that membrane you can see the blood vessels that are going to the small intestine and picking up the nutrients that are being absorbed here and taking them to the liver. So there's meters and meters of it. You can see here large intestine. As I say, we're going to go through all of this in much more detail later on. So what I'm going to do here, this is again the start of that small intestine here. Just going to, you can see how here the pancreas attaches to it. So I'm just going to remove the pancreas. It's quite a diffuse sort of structure. It's just sort of attached to a membrane here. I'm not going to get all of it. There we go. So there's the pancreas, quite a characteristic sort of orangey colour, and involved in digestion and control of glucose levels. So people with diabetes, it's the insulin secreting cells in here not functioning properly, which causes their glucose levels to be out of control. So also here we'll have a look at the kidney. Kidney often surrounded by a thick layer of fat, and there's a bit here with this animal, not that much, so we'll just pull away the fat, and so kidney is the organ that filters the blood and removes the waste products, and they are passed out in the urine. So here we've got the kidney, and you can see this here is the vena cava, and right beside that is the aorta. So the blood vessels going from the aorta into the kidney, the blood goes through the kidney, gets filtered, and then comes back out into the vena cava. And this little tube here is where the waste products go. So this is the ureter. The waste products from the kidney are the urine. So this ureter is going to the urinary bladder. So so that's the kidney. Blood filtration also controls the water level in the body. So if you've been drinking lots, it excretes more urine, and if you're getting a bit dehydrated, it conserves water. Typical kidney shape. As I said, 3 vessels going in, blood out, and urine out. Now there's another little organ very, very close to the kidney, and this is what it takes its name from. Anything to do with the kidney is called renal. So if your kidneys fail, your renal failure, this thing here is the adrenal gland. Ad means next to, renal means kidney. So this tiny structure here is the adrenal gland. Doesn't look very much, but it's a major endocrine gland. So it's a major hormone secreting gland. So from its name, you can pretty much guess what one of them is going to be. One of them is adrenaline. So adrenaline comes from here. A lot of the stress hormones, cortisol, comes from here. The hormones involved in fluid regulation come from here. So the hormone that tells the kidney, whether to excrete more water or retain more water, comes from the adrenal gland. Over 20 different hormones coming from this little gland. Vital, you can't live without it, so it might not look much, but it's an important part of the body. Really, the other thing that we're looking for is on the other side. So move the small intestines out of the way. Here we have the rumen, and down here somewhere. There it is. It's another. So this dark coloured structure I'm just pulling out here. It's attached to the side of the rumen. It's just down on the other side of the animal from where we've been working. So I've just moved all the rumen out of the way to get to this, and this is the spleen. And if you cut the spleen open, so it's a very dark red interior, and that sort of indicates what it does. One of its functions is to store red blood cells. So it's a concentrated storage of red blood cells. If this animal gets stressed, if there's a dog chasing it, something like that, the adrenal gland will release adrenaline, and one of the effects of that adrenaline increases heart rate and that sort of thing. One of the other things it'll do is cause the spleen to empty these red blood cells into the circulation. What that means is that this animal then can deliver more oxygen to the muscles, and that means that those muscles can work for longer and better, so the animal can potentially get away from the dog that's chasing it. So concentrated storage of red blood cells. The other thing that it does is remove old red blood cells from the system, and it also has some immune functions. So it also stores white blood cells, which are the cells of your immune system, and they help to fight infections. So a lot of those are stored here. In humans, when they have accidents, this often gets ruptured, and they generally don't bother trying to repair it, they just remove it. So it's not uncommon to have a splenectomy, which is the removal of the spleen, and you can get by pretty well without it. You don't really notice any adverse effects. So that's the spleen. And really everything else that we have here is all, I'll just push it over, push it out. This is all gastrointestinal tract. So this is, apart from fat, well, there's the other kidney. This is all the digestive tract. Just push it out. I don't want it to go on the floor. So there's the end of the gastrointestinal tract, it's the rectum. There is here the other kidney. This one they call the floating kidney because it's a lot further away from those major blood vessels there, but still connected to them. And there you can see you've just got an empty container. So that's the organs of the abdomen. Now what we're going to do in the second part of this lab is to have a look at this digestive tract and look at the structures and the functions in a lot more detail.